As a retired physician, time,
Precious.
yeah, it's precious.
Absolutely.
You're probably looking for a clear and concise way to understand if a gold IRA could be right for your retirement portfolio.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're diving into today with this guide, aimed specifically at folks like you. We'll cut through the jargon, examine the pros and cons, and hopefully, by the end, you'll have a much better idea of whether it's a strategy worth exploring.
You know what's striking about this guide is that it doesn't shy away from the anxieties many retirees face.
Oh, yeah,
Market volatility, inflation risks, you name it.
it's a pain.
It really pushes the idea that relying solely on stocks and bonds might leave you vulnerable.
I've heard that sentiment echoed a lot lately.
Yeah.
It seems like everyone's looking for ways to make their retirement savings more resilient.
Absolutely. And this guide presents gold as a potential solution, acting as a sort of buffer against economic uncertainty. It's fascinating how gold has historically held its value, even increased during periods of high inflation. Think back to the 1970s. While the stock market struggled, gold prices soared.
Wow.
This is why the guide suggests that gold could be a valuable addition to a retirement portfolio, especially for those seeking stability.
That historical perspective is definitely compelling.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into the why, let's break down the what. For those unfamiliar, could you explain exactly what a gold IRA is?
The guide does a great job of simplifying this. Essentially, a gold IRA is a self-directed individual retirement account, but instead of holding the usual stocks or mutual funds, it allows you to invest in physical gold, coins, or bars. And here's the key difference. You don't keep this gold at home.
Right.
It's held in a secure, IRS-approved depository, adding an extra layer of protection and ensuring you comply with all the regulations.
Now, you might be wondering where this gold is actually kept. This is where the custodian comes in. They're like a specialized bank that safeguards your precious metals and handles all the administrative aspects of your gold IRA.
That's a great point. The guide emphasizes choosing a reputable custodian with a solid track record. You want to be confident that your gold is safe and sound.
Absolutely. Now let's dive into the potential benefits of a gold IRA. This guide lists quite a few, starting with its ability to hedge against inflation.
Right. We touched on that earlier with the example of the 1970s. The idea is that when inflation rises, the value of the dollar decreases, but gold tends to hold its value, sometimes even increasing. This can help you maintain your purchasing power even when prices are going up on everything else.
It's almost like having a built-in safety net against rising costs, especially crucial during retirement when you're on a fixed income.
Precisely. And then there's the benefit of protection against market volatility, something we've all experienced in recent years. Remember that stock market dip back in 2022? Gold generally isn't as tightly coupled to those swings, offering a level of stability that can be incredibly reassuring for retirees.
That raises an interesting point. I've heard some people say that gold is too volatile. What does the guide say about that?
Well, while the guide emphasizes diversification and gold's ability to provide stability, some experts argue that gold's long-term returns are lower than stocks. It's a trade-off between potentially lower returns and greater stability. The guide really stresses the importance of considering your individual risk tolerance and investment goals when deciding how much, if any, of your portfolio should be in gold.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
You really need to consider your own circumstances and comfort levels. But let's get back to the benefits for a moment. The guide also talks about gold's long-term stability, right?
Absolutely. It emphasizes that gold has been a store of value for centuries, even during major financial crises.
Right.
That historical perspective is pretty powerful, don't you think?
It definitely adds a sense of security, knowing you're investing in something that has literally stood the test of time. And of course, there are potential tax advantages to consider as well.
The guide does mention the possibility of tax-deferred or even tax-free growth, but it does depend on whether you choose a traditional or Roth Gold IRA. It's worth exploring further with a financial advisor to see how those tax benefits could apply to your specific situation.
Okay, so far we've seen how gold IRAs can offer a hedge against inflation, provide some protection from market volatility, and have a history of long-term stability. Plus, there's the potential for tax advantages. It's starting to paint a picture of why someone might consider this type of investment.
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, it's clear why the guide sees gold IRAs as a way to add another layer of protection to your retirement portfolio.
Yeah.
This concept of diversification is central to their argument. They really drive home the idea that not having all your eggs in one basket can be incredibly valuable, especially in retirement.
But hold on a second. The guide isn't just singing the praises of gold IRAs. It also dives into some common misconceptions and, even more importantly, addresses the potential for scams. Now, this part really got me thinking.
The guide debunks some common myths, like the idea that you have to store the gold yourself, which, as we already discussed, isn't true. It also addresses the concern about liquidity, assuring readers that you can sell your gold at market value when needed. It even highlights that many reputable providers offer buyback programs to make the process even easier.
That's good to know. And I imagine that peace of mind is crucial for retirees. Knowing they can access their funds if needed can really alleviate some of the anxiety around investing in something like gold.
Exactly. And then it gets into the scams, which can be particularly concerning for retirees.
I'm ready to hear more about this. Could you elaborate on the types of scams people should watch out for?
The guide warns about dealers trying to sell overpriced coins, often collector's items, instead of the standard bullion that's appropriate for IRAs. They also caution about high-pressure sales tactics, urging readers to find reputable companies that provide clear information without forcing decisions.
This reminds me of my own father, who always told me, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. It seems like that age-old wisdom applies perfectly to gold IRAs.
It really does. It's all about empowering retirees to make informed choices and protect themselves from predatory practices.
Speaking of making informed choices, the guide offers some excellent advice on how to choose a gold IRA provider. It stresses the importance of doing your homework.
Reputation and reviews are paramount, it says. Look for companies with a solid track record and positive feedback from other investors. Transparency in fees is also crucial. You want to know exactly what you're paying for with no hidden costs. The guide even suggests reaching out to a few different providers and comparing their fee structures before making a decision.
That's a great tip. I think it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new investment and overlook those details, but knowing what you're paying for up front is essential.
Absolutely. And the guide also points out the importance of considering the provider's custodian and storage options.
Right.
You want your gold to be safe and secure, right?
Of course.
And it suggests looking for a company that offers educational resources, particularly ones tailored to retirees who may be new to this type of investment.
It sounds like they really want to make sure people feel comfortable and informed throughout the entire process. And they even include a case study to show how it all works in practice, right?
Yes. They feature Dr. James, a retired cardiologist who decided to allocate a portion of his retirement portfolio to a gold IRA.
Okay.
What's particularly interesting about his story is that it highlights how his gold IRA helped him weather a stock market downturn.
Oh, wow.
While his equity-based assets took a hit, his gold holdings actually increased in value, stabilizing his overall portfolio.
That's a perfect example of diversification in action.
Yeah.
It's not just a theoretical concept. It can have real-world impact, especially during times of market uncertainty.
Precisely. Dr. James, having witnessed market crashes firsthand, wanted to protect his savings.
Right.
He chose to allocate 15% to gold, a decision that ultimately helped him preserve his wealth during a turbulent period.
It sounds like Dr. James had a good plan in place.
Yeah.
But what about those who were just starting to consider a gold IRA? Where do they begin?
Well, the guide breaks it down into simple steps.
Okay.
First, choose a reputable gold IRA provider. Then you open an account and select a custodian.
Okay.
Once that's done, you fund the account and finally purchase that IRS-approved gold. It lays out a clear roadmap for getting started.
It almost sounds like a recipe. But instead of baking a cake, you're baking a secure retirement, hopefully. Now, before we move on to the frequently asked questions, let's take a quick pause to reflect on what we've learned so far about gold IRAs.
We've explored the potential benefits, the hedge against inflation, the protection from market volatility, the long-term stability, and the potential tax advantages. We've also discussed the importance of choosing a reputable provider, being aware of scams, and understanding the key steps involved in setting up a gold IRA.
It's been a lot of information, but I think we've covered the essentials. Now, are you ready for a rapid-fire round of those FAQs? I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear the answers.
All right, let's tackle some of those common questions this guide addresses.
Fire away. I'm all ears.
Okay, here's one that comes up a lot. Is a gold IRA, is it better than a traditional IRA?
Oh, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Well, the guide smartly avoids taking sides.
Okay.
It emphasizes that gold IRAs offer diversification benefits that traditional IRAs, which typically rely on stocks and bonds, might lack. So it's not about one being inherently better, but rather about different tools for different purposes.
Right.
A gold IRA could potentially add a layer of protection and stability to your retirement savings, but it's important to consider your overall investment strategy and risk tolerance.
It's like having a toolbox full of different options, and
Yeah.
you choose the right tool for the job, right? So how do people decide how much of their retirement portfolio should be allocated to gold? I imagine that's another common question.
Absolutely. And the guide, citing financial experts, suggests a range of 10% to 20% as a general guideline, but it stresses that this is not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
The ideal percentage for you depends on factors like your risk tolerance, your overall investment goals, and your comfort level with different asset classes.
So it's really about finding the right balance for your individual circumstances. Now, here's a question that might surprise some listeners. Can I take physical possession of my gold if I have a gold IRA?
Ah, the allure of holding those shiny bars. But the guide is pretty clear on this one. Gold held within an IRA must be stored in an IRS-approved depository.
Oh.
It emphasizes the security and compliance aspect, which is important for maintaining the tax advantage status of your IRA.
So no hiding gold bars under the mattress, I guess?
Not quite. And it's also worth noting that if you want to withdraw the gold before retirement age, you'll likely face penalties and taxes.
Right.
Those rules are there to encourage long-term saving for retirement.
That makes sense. It's important to remember that IRAs, whether traditional or gold-backed, are designed for retirement savings, and there are rules in place to discourage early withdrawals.
Okay, another question that often comes up. Are gold IRAs subject to those required minimum distributions, the RMDs everyone talks about?
Now, you might be familiar with RMDs. Those required minimum distributions from traditional IRAs after a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
It's the government's way of making sure you start taking money out of your retirement accounts and paying taxes on those withdrawals. Well, the guide makes a distinction here.
Traditional gold IRAs, like traditional IRAs in general, are subject to RMDs starting at age 73. However, Roth Gold IRAs, which are funded with after-tax dollars, are exempt from these RMDs. It's just something to keep in mind depending on which type of IRA you choose.
So many factors to consider. It seems like setting up a gold IRA isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It requires research and planning. What would you say to someone who is considering this option but feels overwhelmed by all the information?
I'd say take a deep breath and don't get discouraged.
Yeah.
This guide is a great starting point for understanding the basics.
Right.
Remember, it's designed to equip you with the knowledge to make informed decisions. And of course, don't hesitate to seek guidance from a qualified financial advisor.
Right.
They can help you assess your individual situation, weigh the pros and cons, and determine if a gold IRA aligns with your overall retirement goals.
It's like having a knowledgeable guide on a journey. You don't have to navigate the terrain alone. Now, this guide also delves into the practical steps involved in setting up a gold IRA, right? Could you walk us through those?
Absolutely. The guide breaks it down into 5 key steps.
Okay.
Choose a reputable gold IRA provider, open an account, select a custodian, fund the account, and finally, purchase IRS-approved gold.
Got it.
It's a straightforward process, but each step requires careful consideration and due diligence.
Let's break those steps down a bit further. When choosing a provider, what are some key things to look for?
The guide emphasizes several factors.
Okay.
First and foremost, research the provider's reputation and track record.
Mm-hmm.
Look for a company that has a history of transparency, security, and client satisfaction. You can check online reviews, consult with financial advisors, and even reach out to the provider directly to ask questions and get a feel for their customer service.
So it's not just about finding the cheapest option. It's about finding a provider you can trust with your retirement savings.
Exactly. And don't forget to carefully review their fee structure.
Right.
You want to be aware of any upfront costs, annual fees, storage fees, or other expenses associated with maintaining your gold IRA. Transparency is key here.
Okay, so you've chosen a reputable provider and you're ready to open an account. What happens next?
You'll need to select a custodian to hold your gold. Remember, you can't store it yourself with a gold IRA. The custodian is a specialized entity, often a bank or trust company, that safeguards your precious metals and ensures they meet IRS requirements.
So it's an extra layer of security and compliance.
Precisely. And once you've selected a custodian, you'll need to fund your gold IRA.
Okay.
You can do this by transferring funds from an existing retirement account, rolling over a 401k, or making direct contributions.
And then comes the exciting part, buying the gold.
Exactly. But it's not as simple as walking into a jewelry store and picking out a shiny gold coin. With a gold IRA, you're restricted to purchasing IRS-approved gold,
Okay.
typically bullion bars or coins that meet specific purity and weight standards.
It sounds like there are a lot of details to consider.
There are, but reputable providers will guide you through the entire process, making sure you understand your options and make informed decisions. They'll also help you navigate any tax implications associated with your gold IRA.
That's reassuring. It sounds like having a knowledgeable provider on your side can make all the difference.
It really can. They can help you create a personalized strategy that aligns with your retirement goals and risk tolerance.
So we've covered the benefits, the misconceptions, the scams to watch out for, and even the steps involved in setting up a gold IRA. But I think we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
You're absolutely right. We've laid a good foundation, but there's always more to learn. For example, we could spend hours discussing the intricacies of different types of gold investments. Bullion, coins, mining stocks, each with their own nuances and considerations.
And then there's the whole world of precious metals beyond gold.
Oh, absolutely.
Silver, platinum, palladium. They each have their own unique properties and potential investment applications.
Exactly. And we haven't even touched on the geopolitical factors that can influence precious metal prices or the ethical considerations surrounding gold mining.
There's so much depth to this topic. It's like peeling back layers of an onion, and with each layer, you discover something new and intriguing.
That's a great analogy, and that's what makes this guide so valuable. It piques your curiosity and encourages you to keep exploring, to keep asking questions.
But before we send our listeners off on their own deep dive into the world of gold and precious metals, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, that sense of stability that gold can offer, especially for retirees.
It's a fascinating aspect, isn't it? It goes beyond just the financial numbers. There's a psychological element at play here, a deep-seated human desire for something tangible, something that holds its value, even when the world feels uncertain.
You know, it reminds me of something my grandfather used to say. He lived through the Great Depression and always emphasized the importance of having something real to fall back on, something you could hold in your hand.
That's a powerful sentiment, and I think it resonates with a lot of people, especially in times of economic turmoil. Gold has been a symbol of wealth and stability for centuries, and that symbolism carries weight even in our modern digital world.
So it's not just about hedging against inflation or diversifying a portfolio. It's
Well,
about that feeling of security, that peace of mind that comes from knowing you have something tangible to rely on. Imagine waking up during a market crash, knowing that a portion of your savings is safely tucked away in a tangible asset like gold. That's the kind of peace of mind that can make a real difference in your life.
absolutely. It's about having that anchor in a storm, that sense of grounding when everything else feels chaotic.
And that brings us to a question this guide subtly raises, but doesn't explicitly answer. Could a gold IRA be that missing piece of your retirement plan? The piece that allows you to sleep soundly at night, knowing that you've taken steps to protect your hard-earned savings.
That's a question only you can answer. But hopefully, this deep dive has provided you with the information and the tools to start exploring that question, to weigh the pros and cons, and to make an informed decision that aligns with your personal circumstances and financial goals.
We've given you a taste of what a gold IRA is, how it works, and its potential benefits and drawbacks. We've also touched on the importance of doing your research, choosing a reputable provider, and understanding the tax implications.
Remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to planning for a secure and comfortable retirement. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to seek guidance from financial professionals, and to explore all your options.
And if you find yourself wanting to delve deeper into specific aspects of gold IRAs or precious metals investing, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always here to help guide you on your journey towards financial well-being.
It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
And with you, our listeners. Until next time, happy